me to stop and listen. Teach me to center down. Teach me the use of silence. Teach me where peace is found. Teach me to hear you calling. Teach me to search your word. Teach me to hear in silence things I have never heard. Teach me to be collected. Teach me to be in tune. Teach me to be directed. Silence will end so soon. Then when it's time for moving, grant it that I may bring to every day and moment peace from a silent spring. Teach me to be collected. Teach me to be in tune. Teach me to be directed. Silence will end so soon. Then when it's time for moving, grant it that I may bring to every day and moment peace from a silent spring. People of the risen King, delight to bring him praise. Come all and tune your hearts to sing to the morning star of grace. From the shifting shadows of the earth we lift our eyes to him, where steady arms of mercy reach to gather children in. Rejoice, rejoice, let every tongue rejoice. One heart, one voice, O Church of Christ, rejoice.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being with us here at Walnut Hills on this winter day, it feels like. Thank you for gathering with us. Hopefully we'll warm up together. And for those who are with us online, well done staying home and staying warm there too. My name is Nate Nims. It is good to be with you here at Walnut Hills. We want to be a place to call home where all are welcomed, nourished spiritually, and sent forth to serve, and it's good to be together. As we begin the service, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, and we'll join in singing O Parent by Whose Name. It's in the hymnal on 447 and up on the screen.
Our parent by whose name all parenthood is known, who in your love proclaim each family your own. Direct all parents guarding well, with constant love a sentinel, the homes in which your people dwell. O Jesus, who a child within an earthly home, with heart undefiled, did to adulthood come. Our children bless in every place, that they may all behold your face, and knowing you may grow in grace. Blessed Spirit, who can bind our hearts in unity, and teach us so to find the love from self set free. In all our hearts such love increase, that every home by this release may be the dwelling place of peace.
Take a moment to greet some of the folks that are nearby you. Well, as you find your way back to your spot, we'll invite any kids that want to come up for the children's time.
This is where children belong. Welcome them, part of the worshiping throng. What a gospel, bread and cup, and song. This is where children belong.
On cards? Cool. Hey. Well, how are you all doing today? Yeah? On a scale of thumb down to thumb up, where are you at? Yeah? Some down, some sideways, some up. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you can say how you're doing. Now, We're going to read a story today about a time when Jesus got lost. So Jesus went to Jerusalem with his parents, with Mary and Joseph, and then as they were going home, Jesus stayed behind. Yeah, well, he did get found, but they didn't know where he was for a bit. And it made me think of, there was one time, have you ever been lost? There was one time I can think of where my mom thought I was lost. We went grocery shopping, and I was sitting in the back seat of our van, and I was in a spot where my mom couldn't see me if she looked in the rearview mirror or if she turned around, because I was just sort of tucked down below the seat. So my mom was convinced that I was left behind at the grocery store. And so she said to my older sister, who was sitting up front with her, which is why I was tucked in the back, because I was angry that she was up front and I didn't get to sit up there. My mom said to my sister, we have to go back to the store to get your brother. And I thought to myself, they don't know I'm back here. Let's see how long this takes. So they drove all the way back to the store to find me. And then when they got out of the car, I let them know I was there the whole time. Now, if you were ever lost, what would you look for? How would you try to get safe? Where would you try to go to be found? What about you? Yeah, look for the spot where your mom parked. That's a good idea. What else? What about you? Yeah, police station. Look for folks that can help you that way. Yeah. In our story today, it says that Jesus stayed at the temple because it was in a place like this where he thought he could be safe and cared for, and that he would be found. And so our hope when we read that story is that everyone can be safe and found in a place like this, where we can know, even if we feel lost, even on our days where we feel like we're thumbs down, this is a space where we can be cared for and we can be loved just like Jesus was. So will you pray with me? Dear God, thank you for all the people who keep us safe. Whenever it feels like we are lost, help us remember your love is always with us. Amen. And if you'd like some candy before you go back to your spot, as we come to a time of prayer with one another, if you have a prayer that you'd like to share with the church, there's a couple ways you can do it. One is by filling out one of these cards and putting it in the offering later in the service. For folks that are with us online, you can email us in the church office and we'll be in prayer with you as well. So as we come together with all the prayers that are in our hearts and minds, let's join in this responsive prayer up on the screen. Eternal God, your wisdom flows through the generations like a river. We give thanks for those who have taught us, guided us, and shown us your way. You remind us that wisdom is not bound by age or station. Your Spirit speaks through children and elders, through questions and stories alike. Teach us to learn, teach us to grow together in your love. Teach us to listen to your voice, no matter where or through whom it comes. Knit us together as one people, learners and teachers, seekers and guides, all growing in your grace. For in every generation, you are God, and we are your people. With hearts open to your wisdom, we pray together the words Jesus taught us, saying, Our God in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. And now we will have some of our high school students lead us in the scripture reading with a bit of a reader's theater today.
Now every year, his parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up, as usual, for the festival. When the festival was ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey.
Then they started to look for him among his family and relatives. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him.
After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers.
When they saw him, they were astonished, and his mother said,
"Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been looking for you in great anxiety."
He said to them,
Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?
but they did not understand what he said to them.
Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and he was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart, and Jesus increased in wisdom and in years, and in divine and human favor.
So sometimes when you read a passage in the Bible, it's okay to ask the obvious questions like, why did someone think to write this one down? Because none of the Bible authors were paid by the word or the page, and paper was actually sort of a high need commodity. So they tried to fill the space as much as they have with as few words as possible. So the rarity of materials and the uniqueness of this story might make us wonder why Luke thought this one was necessary. Because among the Gospels, only two of them, Matthew and Luke, tell us anything about what we know as the nativity, or that birth narrative of Christ. Mark starts when Jesus is in his 30s. John has a little bit of a poetic prologue, but then jumps in as well. But Matthew and Luke give us those childhood details. And then Luke is the only gospel to share anything about what Jesus was like when he was 12. And the one story that Luke decides to share is the one that reminds Mary and Joseph that they misplaced a child. So I'm sure they really appreciated, like, this was the example of adolescence that you wanted to share with generations to come. So this is a unique story, but at the same time, it's kind of a very ordinary story. Now, this is not a perfect analogy, but Luke writing about Mary and Joseph taking Jesus to Jerusalem for the Passover is a bit like you saying to a friend, hey, do you want to join me for Christmas Eve at Walnut Hills? Right? Like, it's just sort of an ordinary annual occurrence. This year, we're going to have 2 services at 4:30 and 7, so mark your calendars. But Luke is sharing this story, and it's just sort of a matter of fact, like, yeah, every year there is this gathering. Every year there is this event. Every year there is this opportunity to come together as a community and participate in this act of faith that happens on an annual basis. And for Joseph and Mary and Jesus, they would have taken that route just over 85 miles from Nazareth to Jerusalem. And they would have taken that route together. In the ancient Near East, folks would travel for the Passover, one of sort of 3 big festivals that were held every year in Jerusalem. And they would travel by caravan with a group of the men walking together, usually a group of women walking together, usually, and then kids kind of wandering back and forth in between, a bit like the Oregon Trail back in the day for our purposes, where folks would stretch out an accordion back and forth, sort of spreading out as they walked during the day, but then coming together at night. So they would have walked back and forth in the spring to celebrate the Passover. And Passover, if you don't remember or if you do, is one of those examples of how we keep our memories and traditions and our stories alive. Because the point of Passover is that we don't forget who we are as a people, that we are people who have been liberated from oppression and slavery, that God hears our cries and responds with love, and that we are invited to do the same for one another. So throughout the celebration of Passover, you share a meal and you participate in these moments to remember why this night is different from all others. You eat unleavened bread because you have this feeling of anticipation that something is going to happen soon, so you can't wait for the bread to rise because the time to move could come at any moment. You eat bitter herbs to remind yourself and to taste the bitterness of your tears. Passover is this remembrance of back in the day these things happened, but they still happen now, and we are a part of it, and God is bringing us into this freedom so that we can identify ourselves in this goodness and grace and love. And so by telling us this story, Luke is reminding us that every act of worship, every season of faith, it's a way of remembering who we are, whose we are, and how we find ourselves with one another. It's as if Luke is reminding us in this story that Jesus had an ordinary life in the ancient Near East. But there's an odd phrase, or a phrase that I always think is a bit odd in this passage, because Luke writes the boy Jesus, which is probably good because we tend to imagine Jesus in his 30s. But Luke goes out of his way to remind us that Jesus was 12. So Jesus is 12 years old, which means in the ancient Near East and today, he's sort of on the verge of adulthood. He's a tween. He's not quite bar mitzvahed. That would have come at 13. So if Jesus is 12, Jesus is in middle school, which means Jesus is probably saying 6, 7, and even God doesn't know what that means. Right? Like, it's just, what's the point? And it is easy for me to make fun of 6, 7 and feel old that I don't know what it means, but then I think back to how I was even in college. And does anybody else remember when planking was a thing? We would just lie on stuff and have somebody take a picture and be like, what is it? I don't know. Planking. And then we did owling, and then we quoted from Dumb and Dumber to one another all the time. So maybe 6, 7 isn't that bad after all. But I think Luke wants us to imagine Jesus in that sort of tween space. What might Jesus have been like at that age? Do you think he was ever self-conscious about his zits? Do you think he ever caught himself as his voice was about to crack? Do you think there were those moments where Jesus didn't quite remember that his feet had grown and so his steps were a little different and he was tripping over himself? By telling us this story and by reminding us that Jesus was a boy, Luke is letting us know that he was someone that grew up, that he was a part of a faithful family that was connected to this community of faith, that they would take part in these rituals and routines and moments of worship, but he was someone that grew up in faith, and maybe as a 12-year-old, the thing that he liked going to the temple the most was the candy that they have there. Because last week and then a few other kids this week have drawn pictures up that we have hanging in the entryway about what they like about this church, and candy is mentioned a few times with a few unique spellings as well. But there is still something about being connected to a place and a time and a people where you start to feel at home and welcome. So if everything in this story that Luke has tells us things as they should be, it should then also sort of make us ponder what makes this story unique, what makes it different. So Luke tells us that after the festival were over, they were returning home. But the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, and his parents didn't know it. And supposing he was among their band of travelers because they were traveling together in that community, they journeyed for a day, and then they started to wonder where Jesus was, and no one could find him. In this text, it's not just that Mary and Joseph aren't sure where Jesus is, it's that everyone is unsure. And I think, at least for myself, one of the reasons why I like this story is that it reminds us, or at the very least it reminds me, that I don't always know where to find Jesus. And sometimes I'm just looking for him. The fancy word that we use to talk about how we understand Jesus in academic theology is Christology. That's the fancy word that we use to talk about our understanding of Christ. And sometimes we have a Christology that comes from above, and we imagine that Jesus drops into this life as a fully formed adult, and we can connect with this idea of Christ's divinity, seeing him as God with us, as the energy and the creativity and the vitality of God. As the Gospel of John puts it, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There's this high Christology that comes from above that focuses on that divinity. And then other times we have a divinity that comes from below, a Christology that reminds us that Jesus was fully human, that he was earthly and embodied in this existence, that Jesus would have had his diaper changed, that in the Last Supper, Jesus teaches us something about what it means to be human by sharing a meal with his friends, by washing their feet, and by telling them how to love one another, that Jesus in his humanity teaches us what it means to embrace our own humanity. So sometimes we have a Christology and this view of Christ that comes down from above that only focuses on divinity. Sometimes we have a Christology that rises up from below that only focuses on the humanity. But I think Luke invites us to find that middle way. That way, when we think about God, we're holding that space from above and below to this mystery where we say it is fully human, fully divine, the fullness of God's mercy, grace, and love with us, that God is with us in such a way in Christ that God is found in creation within us and among us and incarnate as one of us. So as our faith looks up and out and around, there are times where if we only have a Christology from above, Jesus can feel distant or disconnected from the realities of our life. But if our faith is only looking from the ground up, we can lose track of the wonder, of the awe, of the sense of the miraculous and the holy and sacred, and that divinity that sparks something in our souls. So the beauty often of our faith is that we're invited to both look up, look down, and look around in between, acknowledging that we, like Mary and Joseph, we don't always know where to find Christ. But in the same breath, we can say that Christ is with us, not distant or disinterested, but one of us, within us, among us, because we are in this together. I prefer the kind of faith that says Jesus can wander off from time to time, and that I can't contain or fully understand or grasp what that means, but we're invited into the search, into this participation of God's grace. So Luke tells us that 3 days passed before Mary and Joseph find Jesus, which is a bit of Easter foreshadowing in this story. And when they find him, he's sitting in the temple among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. Jesus, as God's Son, is sitting humbly in conversation, curious and engaged and learning. And I appreciate that because it reminds us that faith is not always found in the answers, but like this boy Jesus, in asking the questions and showing up and being involved in the conversation. When we don't know where to find Jesus, perhaps we should start by going to the place where questions are asked and where people are listening and seeking truth together. And for the sake of maybe risking my own job security, we should find Jesus in the places where faith is not a monologue, but a dialogue that we participate in. And I can say all of these things about being inspired about a 12-year-old going missing because I have never had to be responsible for a child in my life. If you are a parent, a grandparent, or a better aunt or uncle than I am, you probably know the shock and the fear and the worry of a child gone missing. That sort of heart-stopping moment of thinking, I thought I knew where this kid was, and now they're just gone. And I imagine Mary looked a lot like this. Right? It's her Home Alone moment. All of a sudden, Kevin's not there. And there's this realization that we've lost something. And this isn't just losing track of a kid in a backyard or wondering where they rode off their bike to. This is losing a child in Jerusalem for multiple days, losing them and having no concept of where they might be. So imagine the question that they might have had about when did you last see Jesus? I thought he was with you. Well, I thought he was with you. I thought he was with his friend. I thought his friend brought him back. And they go back and forth and they wander until they finally make it back to Jerusalem, and they're searching and they're searching. They find Jesus at the temple. Mary says, your father and I have been worried sick, and Jesus responds almost in a way as if he were to say, bruh, it's okay. Right? Like, it's almost passive-aggressive what Jesus responds, because Mary says, your father and I have been looking for you, and Jesus switches the use of that word father and says, didn't you know I would be in my father's house? And I don't think we can blame Mary for being frustrated in this moment, because she spent 3 days retracing her steps in a crowded city, and Jesus acts like she should have known better. But even in the sort of tension of that moment, there's something happening where Jesus is not being defiant as much as it seems like he is discovering language for who he is. Jesus isn't being disobedient or rude as much as he is seeking understanding. Luke gives us the earliest recorded words of Jesus, at least if you think of the Gospels as the biography of his lifetime, these are the first words Jesus says. We don't know anything about his first steps. We don't know anything about the first words he said to Mary and Joseph. But the earliest words he says in the gospel, in the timeline of his life, are, "I'm in my Father's house." Jesus claims this space to discover who he is, claiming that he is connected with God in this place, saying, "I am in my Father's home." Which might make us wonder, when did Jesus know who he was? When did he grasp his identity and come to terms with his meaning and purpose and life? And for that matter, when did you know who you are? How did you come to know your calling or your gifts or your sense of purpose and belonging? Maybe it was here at Walnut Hills. Maybe it was at another church. Maybe it was at a camp. Maybe it was at a school. Maybe it was during sports or scouts. But my hunch is, for you, there is a place where you started to know yourself a bit more completely. A place and a time and a community where you started to understand who you are and what you are in this life for. Now here, we all make a journey each week, and I doubt any of us traveled the 85 miles that Mary and Joseph would have. If you're watching online, you traveled the shortest from your bedroom to your living room. At least maybe you're still in bed and hope you're comfy. But we travel, and we come to this space, even though, you all that are here could be home right now. Have you ever had that thought? I do every Sunday. Every week, I think to myself, people could watch this at home. It's really cold out. Maybe there's a way we could just do this all on Zoom and call it good. And then I imagine I'm going to show up, and there'll be a couple folks in the AVU booth, and we'll just hang out and have some cookies. Because everyone else is like, yeah, you could be home right now. But you travel here because there is something about this space and coming together that matters. And it's not that this building by and of itself is sacred, but something special happens here. So this week, one thing that was special that happened here was the Gay Men's Chorus had their rehearsal that was open to the public. So we decorated the church a little bit. If you've ever wondered what the church would look like with a disco ball in the lobby, it looks pretty good. We did take it down during the week because it wasn't the best balloon, and the light was probably going to pop it, but it was fun. They're in their 25th season, their silver season, and on Monday they had a rehearsal here that was open to folks from the church or their season ticket holders to get a sort of behind-the-scenes look at what the chorus does. And a number of you provided snacks. We had folks from our Social Justice and Reconciling group and our Kaleidoscope Collective come here to help set up and serve and clean up, and it was a good night. But just before the rehearsal started, as folks were coming into the church, there was a leak in one of the bathrooms here. And when I say leak, I mean small flood. I don't want to go into too many details, but we used every towel we have to clean it up. And if you ever saw Parks and Rec, where Ron Swanson says, "I want all the bacon and eggs you have," it was that sort of moment where I was not saying we used a lot of towels. I'm saying we used every single towel we had, and then we still had to mop it up, and then my shoes got moist in the midst of the cleanup as well. It was a bit of a mess, and I am thankful that Sandy was here to help clean up, that Kim was here to help clean up, that Peggy was here to help as well. There were a number of folks helping because I got a master's degree in working at a church that did not include anything about plumbing. So that night, it started with a lot of promise. Because we decorated for the church, we left some of the decorations up today because why not? And we were excited that people were going to come and see the chorus because it's always fun when they rehearse. And I will say, as I was cleaning, I was trying to imagine the number of folks that would be pouring into the church to be a part of that evening, hoping that they were trickling in faster than the water was leaking out of the bowl. So we got all of the water cleaned up and then came to watch part of the rehearsal, and it felt like a bit of a letdown because there were maybe 30 or 40 extra people that came to the rehearsal, and that was great. But in my head, it was going to be like hundreds of folks because, of course, who doesn't want to come to a church on a Monday night to watch a choir rehearsal where they're actually just rehearsing? And it's not a mini show. It's like, we're going to sing these few bars. Good work. Now we're going to sing these few bars. Like, it was very much a rehearsal. But I built this night up in my head as, like, we're going to show off who we are as a church that welcomes the chorus every week. And then the bathroom flooded, and my socks are still drying at home, and my shoes are still just a little damp. And it just sort of felt like a bit of a letdown. So after all of this happened, the next day at the church was the election, and so Mel was here to help clean up and rearrange some stuff so folks could vote. We were taking down some of the decorations, putting away the snacks, and a member of the chorus came up to me and said, thank you for doing all of this. They said, we didn't expect you to set up and take down everything in one night. And then they said, I just want you to know that we feel loved every time we come here, especially on nights like this, because most of us haven't felt that in a church before. And folks have told me that often. And then they've told me stories of conversion therapy and how they were tortured by their church. They've told me stories of not being able to be honest with their parents about who they are because they thought that meant they would be kicked out of homes. They've told me stories of being kicked out of their homes. And then in this night where I was upset about a leaky bathroom and fewer people than I expected, one person just warmed my heart with that moment of, we feel the love every time we come here. And it's not because this building by and of itself is something sacred, but because when we find ways to work with each other, when we find ways to support one another, when we find ways to care for one another and for the community, there is something sacred that happens. This space helps us discover who we are and whose we are. And so much like the temple did for that 12-year-old boy Jesus, I hope this space is one that welcomes us and encourages us to find out who we are, to find that language to claim, this is me, this is who I am. Now, if you are 12 years old, under no circumstance can you stay here for 3 days if your parents or guardians don't know where you are. Like, that's not happening. I don't do lock-ins. I'm not being a long-term babysitter either. But if you are 12 years old, or if you have turned 12 more times than you want to admit, I hope this is a space and a place where we can gather and bring out the best in one another, where we can share those moments of laughter and of loss and of being found as well, and the prayers that we hold in our hearts because we're not sure we have the words to say, where holiness is found in the cards that we send to one another and in the casseroles that get dropped off on doorsteps, in kids running up and down the hallway, in all the ways they misspelled candy. I hope we can see something holy and sacred in the moments when the choir warms up before the service, when the bells are playing, when the kids who had the idea to do a reader's theater want to practice as well, and our AV folks are scrambling to try to make sure everything will be well. There is something holy that happens here. So when Mary and Joseph made their way to Jerusalem, when they thought Jesus was lost, they had that community and they didn't search alone. They were part of that whole, that collective, that caravan, that community that holds them together. And as a church, we're here to do the same with and for one another. When we can't quite find where Jesus has gone, we hold those spaces to look, to question, to doubt, to learn, and to grow. We remind one another that we don't have to have all the answers, but we can find the courage to ask questions and stay involved in the conversation. And that is what makes this space and this time special. That we can show up for one another, check in with one another, follow up after someone's surgery, or sit with someone who is grieving. That is what this community of faith looks like. And that's what you do. And if you think I've just been buttering you up for the last 5 minutes because we're in our stewardship season and I need you to pledge, you are only partially correct. If we're going to be the church together, then we need to steward and care what we've been given and what we've been graced with. And part of that means being generous with one another as you are, but it's not only being generous with finances, but time and energy and passion and searching and longing and belonging and coming together with that grace that invites us to find ourselves and find one another, where we too, like that boy Jesus, can grow in wisdom and grace, because Luke reminds us that if Jesus, God with us, needed to grow up, then maybe we all need to grow up too. That we can be a place that grows up with and for one another. So I want to invite you to think of the ways that we are on this journey together as a church, the ways that this community has helped you find your place and how you can help someone else find theirs. And throughout this stewardship season, we're inviting a few folks to share some words about Walnut Hills and what it means to them. And so I'm going to invite Sarah to come on up and share a few words about what Walnut Hills means for her. So come on up. Thank you very much.
My husband and I grew up in the church, but started to drift away about 10 years ago when we saw people who claimed to love God rejoicing in the leadership of someone who was the complete opposite of everything we were taught growing up. We knew this had to change a few years ago when one day our son looked at my husband and asked, "What's a Christian?" We began our search for the right church. One church was good, but our kids were the only ones there. Another gave a transphobic rant from the pulpit. After looking up LGBTQ churches, because I knew that their values would be similar to what we were looking for, I saw Walnut Hills listed, so we came to check it out. We really enjoyed that first week. I was happy to see people with knitting or drawing, as my ears don't listen unless my hands are busy. At our second attendance, I was excited to see someone that I knew through work. In our conversation, she mentioned how her husband had been talking to a person complaining about all the woke baloney. She looked at me and said, "That woke baloney just sounds like loving my neighbor." I knew in that moment we were home. Our children have found friends here in this community. Our son now knows what being a Christian means. And for the first time in our lives, we found the church that doesn't feel like a chore, but a place that we're excited to be every week.
Thank you, Sarah. So how might that sort of faith shape how we see one another and how we see God and how we continually search for Jesus together? So for the 12-year-olds among us and for those of us that have turned 12 multiple times, what does it look like to be that church together? A church that cares for one another when we're lost, a church that celebrates with one another when we're found, a church that journeys with one another everywhere in between, learning who and whose we are. So may we know that God is still growing with us, that Christ is still teaching us, and that we are called to be the church together. So as the ushers get ready to come around, I want to thank you all for the support that you give, for the ways that you financially offer your gifts to the church, and for all the ways that you help to make this church what it is. And Linda will play for us as the ushers come around. So if you have a prayer card to share, you can put it in the offering when that comes by as well. Thanks, Lynette. We've got a few announcements as we start to wrap things up. So if you are visiting or newer to the church and want to get connected, or if you're with us online and want to let us know you're here, you can text connection to 515-270-9226. It'll send back a link that you can fill out, and thanks for being with us today. Similarly, if you want to get on our newsletter, e-blast comes out every Wednesday, has more information about stuff going on in the church. You can scan that QR code or text news to the church number, and that will get you signed up. Then following the service today, we've got a social justice forum with Iowa CCI, and it'll be a race simulation. It'll be here in the Celebration Center and Sanctuary, so if you want to go grab a snack after the service, you can do that, and then come back. We'll do a little bit of rearranging so folks can be around tables together in here, but if you have signed up, hope to see you soon, and if you haven't, there's still space as well. So I hope you can join us for that following the service. Next week, the Gay Men's Chorus will be with us here at the church as we do our annual reconciling celebration. We've been a reconciling church for 16 years now, and so the chorus will be joining us next week, and hope you can join us as we welcome them to the church next weekend. Then, if you would like to order a poinsettia for Christmas, order forms are on the circle table in the entryway, or you can email us in the church office if you're online. But if you'd like to order, you've got through just about the end of the month to do so if you'd like one for Christmas Eve. Then we collect for the food pantry up the road at New Beginnings on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Sundays of the month. So next Sunday will be one of our collection weeks if you would like to bring in a non-perishable food item. If you bring in something perishable, we do have fridge space for that stuff. And the things that they are wanting right now that are especially helpful are canned goods, especially the cans that you can just open with a pop top rather than the ones that need a can opener. But any donations are appreciated, and thanks to everybody that brought so much at the start of this month. Then next week is our final week for a collection drive with women in the NAACP. For about a month, we've been collecting hair care and hygiene items for children in the foster care system that don't always have access to them, because often children of color are placed with white families that don't always know what products they need or where to find them. So thanks to everybody that has donated. We've filled that collection table a few times, but if you want to donate, we are wrapping up those donations next week, so you can bring something. And then with our stewardship update, thank you to everybody that has pledged so far. If you haven't pledged yet, you still have plenty of time to do so. You can scan that QR code if you want. And I learned this week, just like I didn't learn how to do plumbing in seminary, I did not learn web page design. So I found out this week that on our online pledge card, if you looked at it on your mobile phone, the submit button was the same color as the background, and so you couldn't see it. So I know from looking at the back end of our website, about 80% of the people that have gone to that stewardship page have seen that and thought to themselves, I don't know how to submit, so they haven't done that. Or they submitted a comment box at the very bottom of the website that had nothing to do with the pledge card. But it's been fixed. Yeah, long-winded way to say it's better now. But thank you to everybody that has pledged so far. We're at about 20% of our anticipated budget for next year, thanks to those who've pledged. And we're still doing this for a couple more weeks if you would like to give to the church and have your pledge. So with that, I'd invite you to rise in body or in spirit, and we'll join in singing Lord of All Hopefulness.
Destroy, be there.
So I didn't tell her that we were going to do this today, but we're going to do it today. You may know that thanks to your generosity and giving around the church, we are hiring 2 new positions, and one is for a director of middle school and high school youth group. And this week, we were able to tell Lisa that she has been hired for that position. So thank you, Lisa. Lisa Stagg will be our new youth director for middle school and high school kids, and she sort of helped the kids develop this idea to do the Readers Theaters today. Holly helped to direct it and put it together, so we're looking forward to having Lisa with us, because if Jesus was 12, we'd want him to feel at home here, and we want everybody to feel at home here, and being able to have this position helps with that, so thank you all. So for the 12-year-olds among us and for those that are 12 many times over, may this be that place where we're welcomed. And might we welcome one another with coffee and cookies and some cake down the way as well. It is Pete Peterson's 80th birthday today, so happy birthday, Pete. Hope you can have some cake with Pete after the service. If you want, you can stick around with Iowa CCI in here after you grab a piece of cake. But let's go into this week welcoming one another with this grace as we go and do all the good we can.